And we need to move through the presentation to get to the final item and then come back. So I'm going to sit back here.
I'm gonna sit back here too, and then that way Mark can just like sit.
Mark can sit.
Let's sit right here.
Right. Are there any? Should we start the meeting and just do any chairman and staff reports?
I can start that, yeah.
Okay, it's recording.
Welcome everybody to the August 16th meeting for HALRB. We'll begin with the chairman's report. And also the next staff report. First report is pretty brief this week. Just thanks everybody for coming out. And again, I know it's August, sort of middle of vacation season, so I appreciate everybody's time today. And with that, we can probably move on to the staff report. That's all right.
Yeah. So we'll go to the update and
Mark.
our quorum is walking in.
Right here. Yeah, so we'll be at just an update on an upcoming event. We'll be at the county fair this weekend. So if you guys are stopping by, come into the like the inside part of the county fair, and we'll have a table there, and you can just say hi and see what we have there with everybody.
4 to 8 Friday and Sunday, and then
12 to 4 on Saturday is when we'll be there, but our table will be there with all of our information for the entire part of the county fair. So, anyone have any questions about that?
Do you need to do yours before I do yours?
I'll do the roll first.
All right, thanks.
Please call the roll.
All right, so I'm gonna call the roll. Please say yes if you're here. John Aiken,
Yes.
Mari Davis,
Yes.
Robert Dedka, Alex Foster, Marella Ham,
Doesn't appear to be online.
Gray Henley,
Here.
Jerry Laporte,
I think you said he was going to call in.
Jim Lawrence,
Here?
Becca Meyer,
Here.
Katie Meyer,
Here.
Mark Turnbull,
Here.
Andrew Winchell,
Here.
Jake Woodruff. Got a quorum?
Okay. So with that, we got the explanation of today's sort of online hybrid meeting. And again, welcome to today's meeting. It's effective September 1st, 2022. New state legislation now requires certain county-appointed commissions, including HLRB, to have an in-person quorum to conduct county business, monthly business. HLRB hearings are provided in a hybrid environment, both in person and streamed online. The public may attend and participate either virtually or in person. Members of the board and members of the public joining this evening. Today's meeting is available to stream via the county website via Microsoft Teams link. There's also a dial-in phone option for those who wish to use it. If board members, presenters, or speakers lose internet connectivity during today's meeting, please connect via phone. Please keep your device muted and your video turned off until you are called on to speak. Public speakers not sponsoring items on the agenda. Pre-registration to speak online. This meeting is required. Speaker slips are available at the front of the room for those people in person, and I'll call on you to speak on the presentation of the agenda item. The meeting chat is active for participants who need technical assistance only. It should not be used for discussion, public comment, questions about the agenda items, or requests for more information. All public comments must be shared verbally for record during the assigned public testimony period. All voting will be done by call the roll. And lastly, today's public forum. Today's meeting will be recorded and posted on the county website. All information associated with today's meeting, whether written or spoken, is subject to freedom of information requirements. With that, we'll review the minutes.
So the May meeting minutes, of course I've written the true ones, but, or actually Michael, because she was kind of silly. But Cynthia wasn't able to review them because she was off on her halls, so we're just going to be doing the May minutes.
Did we want to do the bylaws now?
We're going to do them we could do the bylaws now, I suppose, or that way in our first discussion item, like after our, since we already have our,
That's
and then after our consent agenda.
We'll do the minutes for now.
Yeah, minutes, consent
Okay.
agenda discussion.
Are there any questions about the May minutes? Any questions or comments about the minutes? Hearing none, can I have the motion to approve?
I make a motion to approve the May 2023.
Second. Joseph, Jamie.
Either. You can have it.
You were first.
Okay, I'm gonna call your name and say yes if you agree to approve
Or
Linda?
abstain if you were asked.
All right, John Aiken. Mari Davis.
Yes.
Carmela, are you here yet? No. Ray Henley?
Yes. I'm
Oh,
not-
that's right.
Well, I was not there. Never mind. I'm staying.
Thank you. Sorry.
There's a phone number, but
Lawrence? Rebecca Meyer?
Agreed.
Rebecca, can you hear us okay? Just want to make sure.
Yes.
Katie Meyer?
I wasn't here. I'd have to stay.
Turnbull?
Yes.
Andy Winchell?
Yes.
Mike Woodruff is next. All right, motion passes.
So, sorry, the minutes from 2 months later? No. Oh. Sorry, I'm just learning.
Yeah, no, we had a particularly long meeting and it takes twice the length of the meeting to write the minutes, so it's basically a day's worth of work.
Yeah.
And so
Okay,
yes,
that's fine.
and I have some post-traumatic stress from doing it over and over again. But you were fun the first time around and you're better recorded the second time around. No, I'm joking. But yes, so they will be, you will be getting 3, I pretty promise, next month.
Okay.
And then
Lauren, can I change mine to abstain? I was gone at May.
Okay. All right, got it.
I would be
Thank you.
Okay, so consent agenda.
So with that, with the consent agenda, there's one item on it. It's 3605 23rd Street North. Are there any questions or concerns, comments about it on the consent agenda? Anybody want to pull that off consent?
Approve the consent agenda. Second.
I'm going to call your name and provide an answer. John Aiken,
Yes.
Mari Davis,
Yes.
Ray Henley,
Yes.
Joan Lawrence,
Yes.
Rebecca Meyer,
Yes.
Katie Meyer, Mark Turnbull,
Yes.
Andy Winchell.
Yes.
Okay.
So the first item on our discussion agenda is, first and only, excitingly, is a public art project presented by the Arlington Historical Society on the Bull Sellers House. And if you'd like to join us, why don't I let you sit here and I will sit further back, and that way you can be part of the conversation. So this is the Bull Sellers House. It is the structure that you see on the left is the oldest extant structure that we know of in Arlington, Virginia, and the next row is it is open to the public some Saturdays like during the spring and summer as a museum.
April through October.
April through October. And they are the Arlington Historical Society, led by, well, this project is led by Jessica Kaplan, has been working on a project called Memorializing the Enslaved, where they're identifying all the places that people were enslaved in Arlington in order to start to build their names back into the land, because often their records were lost and these people, their lives were not appreciated and celebrated. And as a beginning of representing these names in the land, as there were, as far as your research has shown, I believe, 3 enslaved people on the land, they are applying to install 3 plaques on, so they're brass plaques installed on stone markers that protrude from a gravel bed. Very nice sketch. And the dimensions there, and then these are mock-ups of what it will have. That is the Sankofa, which is a Ghanaian symbol for embracing past lessons for a higher, a brighter future. And they're including as much information in some cases as is feasible. And these are some samples of what it will look like. And so there's the brass plaque, the stone. In this case, the stone is flush, but they are applying, because it is private property, for it to be raised out of the ground and gravel bed. And so staff has recommended this to be approved as it's been submitted. We think it's an important and valuable addition to the interpretation of the house. It does have a historic marker. This is the location that is proposed. There's a historic marker there that does not interpret the history of the enslaved at the site. And we believe that as it is an educational location, it is an addition to the site. In addition to that, that site, because it's by the utility easement for the pavement and the sidewalk, and there's already been a historic marker, we know that archaeologically it's been disturbed, and so any new installation wouldn't damage any archaeology at that depth. If we have any DRC comments, then I'll invite the applicant to just.
Comments in? DRC?
No, they didn't have any plans.
Can I just ask, is this the entrance to the ball seller's house?
It is for the caretaker, but not for.
Or is it a
You just,
back?
it's one of them,
Uh-huh.
you can
So-
take it and it leads
It
around.
doesn't
to the
come
back.
across as being hidden in the back anywhere or anything like that. It's where
Yeah.
you would
Follows down
normally
the
come
street.
upon it.
You could come up, well, yeah, that's if you're coming, from the north. If you're coming up from the south, you would hit the the older piece of the house, which is the ball cellars. Well, the ball portion of the house, and you could walk across the grass.
If you go back to that last photo, you can see it's not far from the park marker.
Right.
Yeah, that accesses all the way into the back, and there's a big overhang with a wisteria, and it takes you right into the ball seller's house. Beautiful. Very invasive, but.
I know.
I would say that this is going to be part of a larger plan, and I know that Jessica and the AHS team are still working on the logistics for the other markers. So this would just be approving the ones here because we cannot predict what will be feasible in all the sites that she has selected or that will be identified. And there, in some cases, are a number of people who will be recognized. So it may not be feasible to do these individually. So this may not represent what happens elsewhere, in particular if the future items need to go in the right of way and they can't protrude, they can't have any of the similar elements. So we are just reviewing this at this site right now.
Other comments from the applicant?
About the project. We found so far over 1,500 enslaved people, been able to give 800 of them names, which is exciting because
Wow.
people are no longer forgotten. We have all of the information on the enslaved on a database, not a database, spreadsheet that's on our website, the Historical Society. There's a timeline of slavery in Arlington. A few articles about different individuals with really interesting stories that we've been able to trace, which is very, very difficult. We are just starting to get started with it's called, I don't know if you've heard of stumbling stones or Stolperstein that they placed in Germany to honor Holocaust victims. So this is sort of our test site since we own it. We figured that would be a great place to start. Arlington Public Schools is helping us with this project, and they have a manufacturing class at the Career Center that will be making the plaques. And they made this one that was just a sample plaque for Nancy. And I've changed it up a little bit, and it's probably, when I talk to different communities in the county, I can pass that around.
Later.
I've been talking to them about the African symbol and whether or not it's something that they feel is important to have or not to have. So that's something that over time could change. But we're hoping that this will be the test case, and I'm working with all sorts of people in the county, including Serena, to figure out a process to get at least 30 stones down this coming year, in the spring. I found about, there are like 105 locations of enslavement, but I think Serena was alluding to the fact that some of them, like Arlington House or Abington Plantation, they had massive numbers of enslaved people. So you couldn't just put these little stones all over the place. So in that case, we would have the Career Center students help us design a bigger one-piece plaque. And the cool thing about the students working on this is they'll each, whatever plaque they work on, they will learn about that person. I think it'll be just an amazing experience for them. So I'm excited, and I guess I didn't realize, I knew this was in the right of way, and I thought I was going to need a permit to dig in the right of way.
It's your property.
It's our property, yeah, but I thought it was
In
the
the
utility. Yeah.
Oh,
So
that's,
Mm.
it's certainly not in the right of way, but it may be in the utility easement. So I can check that.
yeah, I tried to get DES. Yes, and I haven't been able to. But yeah, as a test case.
It's a wonderful project.
Thank you.
It really is. I can't imagine the amount of work that goes into this. Just one quick question. Do you know anything more about these three individuals than their names? Because even if you knew what their
I don't even know some of their
what their
names.
employment was. Oh, but Nancy,
Nancy,
yes, unknown male.
Nancy, I know
I mean, seamstress or
she was a caretaker of Arlen.
I think it would enrich it if you could say,
You think an occupation?
yeah,
would enrich it?
caretaker or mother of four or, anything that you
I thought
had.
I'd put it, but all I know
No,
is
but you know what I mean. It
I
makes
know
her a
2
real
years of her
person.
life she was a caretaker, but she was enslaved, so she probably did. This is the thing. Many.
Well, it's what you know about her. Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you put it in the spreadsheet? Because I know that has a.
Mhm.
Okay.
It's all in the spreadsheet. And yes, I have been toying with the idea of the occupations.
I think it would make it more real, like a real person and not just a name.
Yeah, like.
That's a wonderful
Okay.
initiative.
Yeah, really, the ones without names, I was able to pull from census information. And they give you, depending on which census, either the date they were born or a range of dates, because they'll say age, right? But it could be 0 to 16, and then 16 to 35, that kind of thing. So get the range if that's all I got. Or luckily for this person, I was able to get an actual year.
Person comments?
Yeah, I agree. I think it's a great project.
Thank
It's a
you.
wonderful
It
project.
really is.
This is actually kind of more of just a general question. With the raised stones, is there any concern with it being so close to the street there about anybody kind of bumping into these things or the aesthetic of it or anything?
Well, the whole idea of a stumbling stone is that people like mentally stop when they see something like
Mhm.
this, and you're forced to think about what it means. And so you want to get it I wanted to get it as close to the sidewalk as I could.
Mhm.
I don't think there's any car issue.
Sure.
I guess somebody could trip over it if they weren't paying attention.
But they're walking on that property though, that they've ventured off the sidewalk.
They ventured off the sidewalk,
It's
but
already-
they are raised, so
So they should be.
I would think, yeah, I don't think grass will be covering it in any way.
Also, this site is not ADA accessible, right? Because the pavement is not more than 3 feet, and so.
Absolutely not.
Outside of the.
They didn't have any. They didn't have this in 1750, yes.
Also,
and beyond. Till now.
Wonderful amount of research you guys have done on the project. So it's very
Do you feel like you've exhausted the research potential of finding additional individuals?
Well,
I mean, there's a limited number of sources.
there's a
I would
limited
think.
number of sources. I think we have, it was very difficult to figure out who owned property along the borders of what I would now call Arlington. And, you had Del Rey and along Mount Vernon Avenue that was part of Arlington at different times. And in the records, this is the county portion of Alexandria County. I've done my best I've used the current map of Arlington over old maps and trying to figure out where, and I've had one guy come up to me and said, the Upton family. I didn't know, I knew they owned a tiny bit of land in Arlington, but it seemed like the majority of it was in Fairfax, and someone who had done Civil War research said, no, a good piece of it was in Arlington. You should put them into the research. So those things I think are going to happen. The other thing is, on our spreadsheet, we have not put in full census information for 1830, 1840, and 1850. There's a lot of it on there, but it's not fully complete. And so I think once that's input, I know I'm going to be like digging in the dirt for some of these people that, wait a minute, where did they live? But there we have, several researchers working on this. So I'm the lead researcher, but yeah, I haven't gotten into everything yet. So yes, I do foresee additional names being put on it. I just don't know. I'm really hoping that we're going to get family from all over saying, oh my gosh, I can help you fill this out.
Yeah, that was my other question. Have you been able to relate any of these individuals to surviving family in the county?
I have, well, of course, there's the Arlington.
Well,
House.
there's the Arlington House.
Yeah. But outside of that, there's two that I found. And one that I can't get in touch with, and the other one, they really want to talk to me about it, but I'm working on it. Arlington is one of those communities that people that goes back.
Everybody. Yeah.
A lot of the, especially during that period of the Civil War, a lot of the former slaves came to Washington. They didn't know exactly where to go, where they were going to find work, and ended up in Arlington. So they weren't enslaved here, but they actually, put down their roots here.
That's great.
Is there any thought about putting things closer, I guess, to like the other side, closer to like the historic ball side of the property?
The Bulls didn't have enslaved people, so I didn't want to do that.
Okay.
It made more sense when you explained the stumbling concept. I didn't initially get that when I was reading the report. So I was like, why didn't they do that? So now it makes more sense.
Okay, so that answers my first question too, as to why it's located in the back rather than, or what appears to me to be the back.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah, that didn't seem to be back to me. So yeah, no, it was the Carlins that the initial slave owners.
Okay.
There's a potential that the Bulls, had hired slaves that we have no records of, but I can't find anything.
Just out of curiosity, do you know of any other local jurisdictions that have used the stumbling stone concept, or anywhere in Northern Virginia that's
Not in Northern Virginia. There's a place in Connecticut that does it, but it's not on this scale because they definitely had slavery in Connecticut, but the numbers were much, much smaller. But really, the whole concept of this came from a journalist, Michelle Norris, who wrote about how she thought that stumbling stones would be the perfect answer, to honor the enslaved, because you don't see anything about them. You're seeing more these days. It's great. And I don't know if you're related to him, but Tim Aiken, who lives in Glen Carlin, came to the Historical Society and said, I think this is fantastic. Are you guys interested in pursuing this? And I'm like, oh yeah. And the whole board thought it would be a really
That let's the motion. So we got this I move that HLRB approve COA 23-20 Paul Sellers House Local Historic District. Request to install three brass plaques as part of the Arlington Historical Society's Memorialization of Enslaved in Arlington, 1669 through 1865 project. The plaques will be mounted on blocks set in the gravel in the corner between the public sidewalk and the brick walkway.
Call your name. John Aiken,
Yes.
Mary Davis,
Yes.
Ray Henley,
Yes.
Joan Lawrence.
Yes.
Becca Meyer,
Yes.
Katie Myers,
Yes.
Turnbull,
Yes.
Andy Winchell.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, so since we are, our second discussion agenda, discussion item was canceled, we're going to move to the bylaws, just so we can work through them now while you're still fresh. And so let us get to hear the bylaws. There are copies
So
of the
so it was
drafts.
canceled because they can use the door?
Yes, they're going to
Oh,
reuse the
okay.
door,
Okay.
and they're not going to put the stained glass window. They're also going to, they found, I think I mentioned,
They found the right
for the-
wood,
for the
yeah.
siding. Yeah, so.
Yeah, I was surprised because when we did our, we had to repair the old and then we also put on the addition that we put on, I mean, just 30 years ago. But we had no trouble finding. So, yeah, and yes.
You just have to ask around.
And it's cedar, so it's done well.
Yeah, they're looking forward to the cedar in particular, because they did have some moisture.
I guess they will.
So there are printed drafts if anyone wants them. I did change the language. If you saw the draft that I posted a few days ago, it still had the odd incorrect language, but here we are. Was there anything that jumped out as needing to be changed or added? And so we still have the decision between you, you select the language, whether you would like to qualify or the majority, the number of people on the board currently -1. It looks like Rebecca does have her hand up.
Yes. I just wanted to put in for the quorum comment. I'm in support of the minimum of 5 members present in person. I know last month we had talked about it potentially being the other one, the one less than the majority. But I think given that in a typical meeting, there are 2 to 3 people online, and I know I'm the only one online tonight, but I didn't count for quorum. Think that it's going to have a harder burden on us to try to get more people in the room versus online. And not saying that everyone will be online, but just putting that plug in there as well.
I agree with that sentiment too. I think even if we go with the 5 versus the one less than majority member, it will give us more flexibility for members to attend virtually. And I think that would be really good for people who might have, flight commitments and other well. I'll take it, I know that there was some sort of discussion about whether or not that would sort of reflect on status for our organization, but I think it would be 5 as well. Simply for ease for the staff, obviously, and then also for flexibility of the members.
I would echo John's sentiments exactly. I think that it'd be great to have everybody here every week, but I think this the way life works and the way things work, and it's better to have it be a minimum number. I mean, it would be nice to have everybody here every meeting, but it's just not the way it's going to work out. So, and just dealing with the sort of facts and grounding makes sense just to do 5. But yeah, I understood. Obviously, last week there was some concern about it, sort of reflecting really upon the board being the lower number, but I think it just makes sense logistically. I think that's what drives my my thoughts about it.
And staff hopes that this will make it more accessible for people maybe who have a disability or not able to come into the space but can represent from home, people who have young children at home, people who are caretakers, people who work non-traditional hours, and this will make this opportunity to volunteer more possible.
This is a question, not a suggested change. But would it be, would it reflect all of what's been said more strongly if we said that the quorum shall consist of a minimum of 5 present in person and some X number of others attending remotely or virtually, so that it doesn't appear that what we're doing is saying that, 5 people can manage all of this business. Because I'm a little worried that, it's a board of 13 when it's full force.
15 minutes.
15, so that's 1/3. And if it turned out that there was sort of 1/3 that were happy and showed up and the other, it just makes me a little worried that if there's 15, we might want to signal that others, that the quorum is 5 present. But in addition, there might, another, I don't know, 30% of the remaining sitting members. You can't make an absolute number though, because there's always so many empty seats, right? Of 15,
Have to be
of the
members
appointed members.
Yeah, we don't have 15.
Right.
We never have.
We never have.
No, that's right. That's why you can't say,
20 years.
7.
You have a couple of questions about that. First, I know there's a Virginia state law about quorum, so
Right.
are we allowed to do that?
So the Virginia state law is just that for architectural review boards, quorum has to be there. It does not establish what quorum is, which is why we are establishing what quorum is, because we actually didn't have any quorum language until we wrote this. We were just going by Robert's rules, which isn't even required by, that's not even in Virginia's statute. So we were arbitrarily making up that number. So that's why we are establishing, but so I think if we were to do either one of the options.
I'm fine with this. I'm fine with 5. I'm just noting that someone could say, if you've got 14 members, the same 5 people show up all the time, and they're the only ones that count, even if somebody comes in on it sort of sets up 2 classes of members. That's
So
all.
this makes sense, and then to say maybe that the votes need to happen by the majority of the sitting board as in a combination of
Yeah,
virtual and hybrid is what you're imagining.
Wait, I'm confused. I thought that as long as we had our in-person quorum, the virtual votes counted.
Oh, they do
Yes.
count. They do count.
Grace,
I think it's a good sentiment and thought, but I think maybe
Not
complicates it
necessary.
a little bit.
Yeah.
And because I think Virginia wants us to have an in-person quorum, right? That's the
Yes.
requirement. Yeah. So I just think we should do minimum that Virginia has asked of us.
I'm fine with that.
Well,
I
and also,
get only 5 people.
And
Right,
hopefully,
correct.
well, yeah, and
I'm
hopefully
fine with
everyone
that,
comes
yeah.
virtually and their votes do count when they come virtually.
But maybe just say something in here like, other members attending virtually have all the voting responsibilities, and something just signals that there's not, that you should attend virtually. If you
Oh,
can't be here in
well, there's
person.
also a policy that requires commissioners they only have a certain number of meetings they can miss
Oh, well, okay.
before they are no longer voting members.
Oh, yeah.
How
That's
many
it.
meetings is that?
Okay, that's fine.
Well, 2 for personal reasons, but for medical reasons, you can miss as many as needed. And so, say some of our commissioners like Carmela and Robert, who've had ongoing medical issues, they are exempt from that. So say you were ill or you had to caretake, it covers caretaking for someone in your family who's unwell. That does not count towards your absence, the absence by choice.
Like travel would, like if you were traveling, that would count towards.
Yes.
Okay.
And I was just gonna say, I think it's clearer if we just, as we say, we just stick with the minimum. And then my suggestion is that, chair and future chairs can kind of try and provide guidance to members on what are the expectations. And if maybe there's kind of a reoccurring theme that's happening, to kind of bring that up, I think we can kind of manage that without it having to be official in the document. I also think if it does become a problem as well, you are appointed by the county board, that could be another way to kind of, I'm thinking drastic, but I'm just thinking that could be another way to kind of make sure that people understand what their responsibilities are.
It's more a worry that I have that somebody will say 5 people are making these decisions and I didn't like it. It's the same 5 people for 3 months. months in a row. And
People could say that about the
anyway, it's fine. I know, and we probably don't need to prolong it, but
I mean, my only concern too is if you have something where you're buying virtual, it doesn't really fix the problem of everyone having to round up the. All of a sudden, you're like, well, who's going to be
yeah,
virtually? Who's
it doubles it, right?
Yeah, and then Serena's having more difficulty.
I think with what's and in each meeting, trying to get know what your schedule is, where we're going to need to have something pull in if you're in person. I think that's helpful. So
Do we approve each one of these separately?
No, so it's one draft. And so it would just be, I think you would choose which quorum language you want, and then if you approve the rest of it, I think we would move just to approve it en bloc.
No more conversation, I'll make a motion to go from there. So I move to approve the updated HLB bylaws, including the provision that quorum consists of a minimum of 5 members present in person.
Second.
all right, I'm going to call your name and make a noise. Johnny.
Sorry, we're voting
Oh.
on every change?
Just-
Yes, all the changes, including the subcommittees.
Are we? Okay,
Yeah, I mean,
that went in the motion, that's all.
I think because that is a change from the language.
I got
think
you, okay.
otherwise adopted.
Yeah. But we could also change the motion.
But what's highlighted is just highlighted for information.
It was added. That's new language and everything else is the same.
We could do something like provision and also in all other revised language as submitted.
I need to second that again since you have Collins or
Seconded.
It's recorded.
All right, I'm going to call your name. Johnny.
yes.
Mari Davis.
Yes.
Ray Henley.
Yes,
Joan Lawrence.
Yes.
Rebecca Meyer.
Yes.
Katie Meyer. Aaron Turnbull.
Abstain.
Andy Winchell.
Yes.
Thank you so much. Okay, so our next item of business is the historic marker for Mount Olive Baptist Church. And I have copies printed here. I made sure to get it inset into the marker just so that we can make sure that we had enough language. And I believe that our applicant is online tonight. Ms. Dangerfield? If you have a comment, we welcome it. If you're speaking, you're
Miss
muted.
Dangerfield, you're muted.
Good evening, everyone. I really don't have a comment. We took the suggestions that you made at the last meeting and we tried to incorporate them. We made a few more edits and I hope you'll be pleased with what you see.
I think, Joan, you had a
Yeah,
comment.
I just had one very, very minor, in the fifth line from the bottom, after edifice, there's a comma that needs to be removed. That's all. I mean, I think it looks, it reads very well.
I think it's a great improvement and it reads beautifully and it's a wonderful commemoration and it covers everything I think that everybody wanted to, had recommended, as well as I think what the congregation wanted, which is the most important part of this. So it's really lovely. I can't believe it all fits, but it's very nice. And yeah, it even fits in the big type. So yeah, very nice.
Thank you.
Any comments or questions from the board? So I moved the HLA, not all of the marker as submitted, including any outstanding. Really one of one. Changes. I move that the HLA be approved at All Baptist Church as submitted.
Second.
John Aiken,
Yes.
Mary Davis,
Yes.
Henley,
Yes.
Lawrence,
Yes.
Becca Meyer, Becca Meyer.
Yeah,
That was a vote, correct?
yeah.
Katie Myers,
Yes.
Lee Winchell.
Yes.
The motion carries.
Can I
Wonderful.
just make one other comment? I want to thank Ms. Dangerfield and the congregation for being so patient with the board and all of our recommendations. Sometimes those seem intrusive, but I think the end product really turned out beautiful.
Thank you, and we appreciate the feedback. Needless to say, it's very personal to us, so it was helpful having someone who wasn't a part of the congregation to kind of look at it and to give us feedback. And I really want to say a special thank you to Ms. Bolliger. I'm a question person, and I must have bombarded her with a million questions throughout the process. And she was extremely patient, and I just so appreciate it.
You were a joy to work with. It was pretty interesting. Thank you so much.
You heard that, commission, interesting.
All right, thank you so much. Okay, moving on to our next historic or marker. This is a deep
Thanks again.
Thank you, Ms.
Thank you.
Dangerfield. So this is a marker for Arlington Junction Park, which you saw the application for the naming last year. There are also copies of this on the table if you want them. It is being presented by the Department of Parks and Recreation. We have received 3 comments, one from Angelina Jones and 2 from Bernie Byrne, who's also here to speak tonight. Mr. Ewart, are you on the line? Would you like to give an introduction to the marker?
He's online, but Mr.
Okay, so this, an introduction if I can. So
I'll message
you saw the language for this, but it was a much rougher draft. They submitted a different version maybe 2 days ago. So if you saw that one, this is the updated version. Ms. Jones had some comments about the fact that there's no mention of the enslaved labor that was used for this project. And she thought that that was inappropriate. And then Mr. Byrne submitted a number of factual comments and some suggestions for changes. And Mr. Byrne, would you like to speak on the, give your public comment, since we don't have a, yeah, comment?
Yes. Yes, should I speak now or after the
Oh,
Mr.
Mr. Byrne, we can't hear you. You're kind of muffled.
Can I speak now or should I speak after the presentation?
No, I'm afraid you're very quiet.
Hold on a second.
I'm having trouble with my video on Teams.
No, we can see you. Great.
Can I speak now or should I speak after the presentation?
There isn't a presentation today because the applicant is not here right now, but
Okay, I'll speak now then.
we had them the first time around. So I think we should be able to hear you okay now.
Okay, well, I'm shouting, but that's my
Don't
problem.
have to shout.
I can't fix my computer. Okay. Unfortunately, this marker is not ready for prime time. DPR needs to correct several errors in the marker before we can consider it further. The marker's opening paragraph states that people use public land and public space in Arlington to travel on waterways and rail lines. However, both the Alexandria Canal and Arlington Junction were on private property. The canal and railroad companies owned the right-of-ways. Neither facility was on public space or public land. The opening paragraph also states that the Arlington Junction station was within the park's area. However, maps do not confirm this. While some of the map's junction's tracks were within the park, the station was apparently located about a block east of the park. DPR needs to rewrite the opening paragraph to correctly describe the features and functions of the park's former transportation facilities. The second sentence in the third paragraph states that in 1896, a new trolley line allowed the Mount Vernon Railway Company to offer service between Washington and Mount Vernon. However, the railroad company's name is not correct. As shown in an article I sent you, in a publication from the company, the company's name was actually the Washington, Arlington, and Mount Vernon Electric Railway. DPR needs to correct that area. The next sentence in that same paragraph states that the new trolley line routes split at the junction to allow passengers to continue west to Falls Church and Fairfax City, or to take a diverging line that served Arlington National Cemetery, Roslyn, and the Green Valley neighborhood. However, no trolley lines travel between the junction and Green Valley. A different line connected Roslyn, Fort Myer, and Green Valley, which was named North at the time. The line that diverged to reach the cemetery in Roslyn did not come close to Green Valley, which is in a different direction. I therefore suggest that the HALRB recommend that the above sentence be changed to simply state, once the trolleys made it to Arlington Junction Station, the line's route split, and passengers could continue west to Clarendon, Falls Church, and Fairfax City, or take a diverging line that traveled north to Arlington National Cemetery and Roslyn, and just leave out the mention of anything about Green Valley. I sent 2 messages to you that provide further information and details about these subjects. Please discuss those messages when preparing your recommendations to DPR. They're kind of technical. If you really read them, you can figure out what I'm really trying to say. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Byrne. Okay, so our applicant has joined us. Let me make sure that someone is here to turn on this week. Yeah, okay. Mr. Ewert?
Hi there.
Perfect. Hi.
Thank you all for your patience. I was planning to hop on at 7:35, but it's good to see that you guys are moving through the agenda quickly. Would you like me to kind of go through the description of our proposed interpretive sign, or do you prefer to just dive in straight with questions? I'm flexible on either of those.
Well, since you've seen Mr. Byrne's comments, do you have any information for us on like why this was developed the way it was, and any changes that you already plan to implement, anything like that?
Yeah, so I'll provide a little bit of context. Obviously, Dr. Byrne submitted comments. I think it was Monday morning, and briefly after that, it was we sent over to you, Serena, an updated version of the historic sign that had both updated imagery that you can see now on the screen, as well as updated language. And I'll provide some context as to why we changed the language, because I think when we saw the mock-up of the design of the sign, I think seeing it within that context made us realize that it wasn't like accomplishing the goals that we wanted it to achieve. And when we realized that the goals of the sign or the goals that we wanted for the sign was to be able to kind of like explain the evolution of this space through time, and highlighting kind of the 2 big, large public infrastructure projects that existed nearby. One of them being the Alexandria Canal, and then the other one being Arlington Junction. Yes, Dr. Byrne sent over the comments, and I think the language has shifted slightly since then. However, I think the comments are still very much relevant to what's on here, and I think that the changes that were proposed are something that we'd be happy to kind of implement. And I can kind of go through those one by one. I have them listed. The first one was kind of a shift in perspective of how in the last sentence of the second paragraph. And I think Dr. Byrne had a really good point about shifting the perspective from Arlington's traveling to Georgetown rather than the other way around, seeing as the park is located in Arlington, obviously. And that's something that we're definitely amenable to. And then the other big one was the correction of the name of the railway. We included kind of the colloquial name of it, the Mount Vernon Railway Company, but having the full, most accurate version of that, the Washington, Alexandria, and Mount Vernon Electric Railway, would be the most accurate version. And making sure that that is what's reflected on the sign is something that we're very happy to do. And we'll make sure that we make those changes before we submit before the final draft obviously gets printed. The other thing that I wanted to mention was just that the last time we were here, we were looking very much solely at the language of that would be on the sign, and we have obviously changed that. And again, I kind of alluded to this earlier with that. One of our main goals with the signage was to talk about the history of the space and its evolution through time, from canal to electric trolley station to roadway to what was almost a streetcar but not a streetcar, and now what will eventually become a public park. And I think highlighting all of these kind of like phases of this space's lifespan is really important to what we're trying to do with the space. So with that, I'm happy to receive further comments and answer any other questions that folks may have.
Did you consider, just given the comment, the other comment I forwarded to you from
yeah, I'm happy to address that comment as well. So it seemed like there were two primary points that the commenter had. The first was that Alexandria Aqueduct is a featured element of the image, but wasn't identified, and we switched over the imagery for that to Arlington Junction Station, and we requested that because it's Arlington Junction Park, and we figured that the imagery should be highlighting the name of the park, and having the accompanied Alexandria Canal diagram on the bottom works well. However, we do acknowledge that there's still not like a caption that identifies both that this is Arlington Junction Station, A, and B, that where this image was sourced from, which we got from the Center for Local History from Arlington Public Library, and we've already reached out to our the contractor who's working on this to make sure that those get updated. And then the other point that was brought up was that the creation of the Alexandria Canal was done using slave labor, and the story that was being told was not a complete story by leaving that portion out. And we are, I think that having meetings like this is exactly why we have HALRB meetings, public meetings, to acknowledge, to make sure that we're not missing like these details that are important to the local history of the site. And we are definitely going to update the language of the written portion of this sign to include that portion of Arlington's history, and make sure that that's known for folks who are visiting the site, and can and folks who read the sign will be able to know that that was part of that slave labor was used as part of the history of this site.
May I just make a comment? I did not, the copy that I sent to you is not based on the most recent one. The most recent one you sent me yesterday, I responded to that one in my message. When I was talking about the one that was on that you submitted yesterday. The first paragraph is, as I say, is completely wrong because of it was not public land. The railroads on the canal owned it. It was private land, and a number of other things that I mentioned. I will send you a copy of what I sent to the HLRB because I sent it to them, but I sent 2 messages to them, but I didn't send it to you. What is your name?
Max Ewert.
Oh, you're Max, okay, I didn't recognize you. Okay, so I'll just send that, I'll send those 2 messages to you, so you'll understand what it is. They have a lot of technical details. So the
Thank
message
you.
you received, you change it after you received that message. You changed it after I sent it to you, but the new changes, what it says today, were on the revised copy. And the biggest change is the first paragraph, really. And the other thing is, remember that Arlington Junction Station was outside of the park area, it was about a block west.
Thank you, Mr. Berg.
Blackies.
Appreciate it. Thanks, Bernie.
So, Max, are you then thinking that because there's a couple more updates that you'd like to do, that the HLRB won't be making a vote tonight, that maybe we'll see another version?
Right.
I think that.
There's a lot that
Yes.
needs to be fixed.
I did have a question, and this is more of an accessibility imagery question at the bottom. I think it's really interesting what you guys have done with the map there, and I think it's wonderful. But there's lots of text I can't see very well, and then the use of those dots there, the pink contrast there, it's very hard for me to see and make a. Is there any way you can maybe look at some more, colors that might be a little bit more easy to read the text on? Or, and I think the image overall is just fine. It works. It's just very hard for me to read it.
Yeah, so the reason we use those colors were because it was the similar colors that were used during the master planning process, and so we wanted to have some kind of thematic consistency with that. But if folks have issues with it, whether they're for access, with like color blindness or something like that, we're happy to take recommendations on what the change should be.
Maybe the next iteration, if just even you can move the text of Alexandria Canal up or something, just to see it, because I'm having a harder time reading the text on it. It's just
Is it the black text Alexandria Canal?
Yeah.
So that
Yeah.
portion of the text is from the map itself that this is from. So we wouldn't be able to change that imagery. The only thing that we've added or that has been added to that image is the pink pinpoint.
I think he's talking about the explanatory text at the bottom.
Yeah,
that
that's really,
describes the
yeah.
images. The Alexandria Canal's fine
Yeah.
on the map. It's just that when you're looking at the explanation of what the images are, that's what's harder to read. So the map itself is fine.
Yeah.
Perhaps the Arlington Junction could be identified under that particular image. And then I don't know if you can move up the map itself so that
Like it's done there.
yeah, like it's done on the white background. If you moved up the map, maybe condense the text a little bit or reposition the text, then you could put the description of the Alexandria Canal on the white background under it, and then that would make it much easier for everybody to read.
Yeah, I mean that's the only big thing I just kind of wanted to mention. That it was hard for me to read, but I feel like you've done a ton of great research on this, so I don't want to diminish that as well.
Also, I had a question too. What are the two sort of pick location marks there? Is one for the park site and one's up something else?
It's the key.
The key. Oh, the key.
Yeah, that was not.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not apparent, but
Yeah.
it is the key.
Yeah,
It's
so
the
I
key,
thought, okay, that's what it took, and I've looked at this for a while, online mostly.
We can clarify that.
Yeah, I think the first paragraph is a little bit redundant because you keep talking about a change in how people use public land, which of course is not public land, and how people do this. And I think maybe a little bit of change in the phraseology would make it flow and read a little bit more clearly.
Okay, yeah.
I'm sorry to keep being the color guy tonight. Do you have any concern over time that if you were to use these colors that they would fade or anything on this marker that would be problematic?
Yeah, definitely. And that's already a comment that we've provided to the landscape firm who has been working with us throughout the duration of this project, is that heavy white background is definitely going to have some issues with weathering over time. And we're going to look to kind of change that to make sure that that's not a long-term issue with the design.
But also in that vein, the shadowing on the photograph is going to completely occlude that photograph within a couple of years because of the way the sun will darken that. I think, yeah, using basic colors for something that's going to be exposed to the weather for a long time will last a lot longer than something that's got that kind of shading and kind of the taupe color is what everything's going to fade to anyway.
Mm-hmm.
We found that these laminate markers tend to have about a 15 to 20 year lifespan, and that's as long as they're going to last in the elements. Kind of depends on how much they're exposed. Certainly, you're right. Like
they get harder and harder to read though over those 15 years.
We've already got the ye olde map color picture,
right?
And everything will become
right.
It just all fades to safe time, which also maybe I guess is an indication.
It's okay as long as you can still see the separation between what was there and what wasn't. But I think from what we would agree this needs to be rewritten and come back to us again. Maybe not make a decision because it's really nice that people have made such thoughtful comments and that we have historians like Mr. Byrne weighing in with the facts because it's much better to get all that straightened out before you put a marker in that's supposed to last for 15 years. And I'm a little concerned about leaving in. It still has the business about Cemetery Roslyn and Green Valley. I think Green Valley's in the other direction. Did the line? So Mr. Byrne was saying, or Dr. Byrne was saying that is not accurate. That it didn't run in that direction. But that certainly needs to get corrected before we put it on here. Was there a stop at Green Valley or Nyack?
I can send you the link to the map that showed that there was a kind of a fork that went towards Green Valley.
Just a minor question, and I'm sorry if I'm getting nitpicky, but was Fairfax City incorporated at the point when you were talking in the placard? Was that like an actual stop, Fairfax City, or?
I believe that was the name of the stop. I don't have that map handy right now, but that's something that we can confirm.
And that's fine. I like I said, it might be right. I just been Fairfax at that point, but I wasn't sure.
Max, you said you have a map that shows where the Green Valley, where the divergence to Green Valley is that, and it seems like you do have some more white space. Like, is there any chance that you might want to try and fit that into to kind of?
I mean,
until he does the text.
If we can do it and it doesn't look busy, I think.
Yeah, it doesn't look busy, but I do like the idea of making the captions a little bit more apparent, because I think being the building nerd that I am, I'm struck by the building and wanting to know more about the building, and so thinking, when was this photo taken? When was this building built? Is kind of things that I like to see. But recognizing not wanting it to be too busy with too many things, I understand that.
Especially if we add the language about the insulated.
Yes.
Agreed.
Yes. Which I think would be good. Yes.
Which was proposed by, if everyone remembers, Angelina Jones used to be me.
Yeah.
She's the former planner for Arlington County, now works for the National Park.
Hi, sorry, I lost connection.
Oh.
So yeah, I mean, we're willing to try it. We're willing to try to kind of incorporate that. If we feel that it kind of takes away from the overall goal of what we're trying to achieve with the sign, then I think we'd probably opt towards not including it. Because the map in question is provides more context for the rail line in general and less context for the site in general, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
It does.
Yeah.
I think it could be really helpful to have like a scale where you can see from like left to right that goes like Alexandria, Arlington, Georgia. Like you can kind of, you could see it. I mean, I just don't know. Like that's the hardest part I'm having right now is I'm looking at the bottom trying to trace it with my eyes, but I can't.
Yeah. It also doesn't help that it's not a north-oriented map.
Yeah.
Which we kind of think in north orientation. But yeah, we can try and find some imagery that would make sense there. And maybe that would be a better use of the inset map, to have the stations that kind of extend out further, down to Mount Vernon and out west towards Fairfax.
I just can't reiterate, you guys have done a great job with trying to pull all this research together.
Yeah.
So it's easy to nitpick, but
It's a really complicated story you're trying to tell, and we recognize that.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it, and I totally understand your why coming back and at another time would be beneficial, just to make sure that we have all of these things lined up.
Do we affect your timeline too much, Max, by having you come back?
I'd have to confirm with Jeanette. I don't like, if we could come back next month, I think we should be fine. But I will confirm with Jeanette on that. There are other things that are impacting our timeline much more than this. I promise you that.
And Max, we're, as you know that the Historic Preservation Office, we're here to help in any way with kind of going through the research or the text, as well as how you'd like to engage with Dr. Byrne with any of his suggested edits.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate it, and if we have any questions, we'll be sure to reach out.
Okay, perfect. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Awesome, thank you.
Great project.
I appreciate it. It's getting there.
Okay, so moving
Thank you.
swiftly on. Thanks, Dr. Byrne.
I just want to make a note, we are on time with the agenda.
Of course we are.
That includes a malfunction, it's a whole thing. So,
All down to our chair.
yeah, exactly. Okay, so we are, this is, I think, our last vote of the night. So this is the proposed draft language for the Colonial Village windows. We do have a speaker who signed up to speak, so I will invite you to speak once we've chatted through this. So you saw this language a few months ago. We both looked at some windows that maybe fulfilled these guidelines. They were first approved in 2015. And since then, the window that had largely been used has been discontinued, and therefore they had to find, and they were not able to find a replacement window that fulfilled the criteria. And so we redrafted their 2015 design guidelines based on the collection of windows that everyone looked at and thought these seem appropriate and these are within these parameters, which do not diverge terribly much from those that have already been approved and therefore should visibly appear similar. The edits in red have been submitted to us from the Colonial Village Board. I believe that Chuck Vaughan is on the line with us. He is the manager of Colonial Village, and we have a speaker from Colonial Village. Chuck, do you have anything to add?
No, I don't. And Jeff is there too, representing one of the boards, Colonial Village 2. But thank you. I appreciate your time and consideration and moving this forward. Folks need some options for windows now.
There are drafts on the table, and so sorry, Mr. Wilson.
Yes, I just wanted to say that I'm the president of the CB2 board, and we are fully in support of this resolution. And we wanted to thank you for putting this together, because when the guidelines were originally written, they were to match basically vinyl windows from the 1980s. And as window technology has gotten better and insulation has gotten better, the new windows look more like actual historic windows than the windows from the 80s. So expanding the guidelines is good for everyone.
And you've lived in Colonial Village for some time.
Yeah, roughly 5 years.
And you've seen a number of the windows replaced.
Well, the thing is, the windows vary quite a bit, because before the guidelines, I won't say it was a free-for-all, because people could replace windows, but the windows have never fully matched. So there is some variation, but this is the right way to do it, where there's a little bit of variation within a set numeric value.
And you now can you still visually see the difference when you?
It's funny because when you walk down the street, I think most people don't see the variation, but the longer you spend there and you look more carefully, you can definitely see variation.
Do you know what proportion, I should have an amount, but do you know what proportion of windows are still the aluminum windows from?
That's very hard to say. I mean, for instance, in my particular unit, the windows were replaced probably in the late 90s or the early 2000s. So some of the windows were replaced quite a long time ago. So I don't know if Chuck happens to know. I don't know if it's 40%, 50%, 60%. It's not 75. It's not 25. I don't know where.
Aluminum was the original?
No, none of them.
They were wood.
1980s. That was the 1980s
When
replacement.
they became condos.
One full renovation that happened.
Right. The percentage is it's pretty small, and the hurdle had been for most people, the wood-clad windows was the only thing that would be approved prior to this vinyl window approval back in 2015. So because of the expense of custom windows and wood windows, a lot of people weren't replacing them. When the Paradigm hybrid window was used as was approved in 2015 for use, I probably have had 20 maybe folks that have gone ahead and moved forward with that. And then this Paradigm hybrid window was discontinued. So then we're back to square one again, in essence. So that's where this came up.
So how does everyone feel about the edits?
Clarifies numerically what we were trying to do when we looked at the window.
I wasn't sure if the only thing I questioned was the inclusion of the half screen language, just because generally we don't screens or things because they're removed that we don't review, but I realize that this is for a cohesion of ability reason. But that was the only thing that I wasn't sure should be included in our guidelines and should be a requirement for the board. But since our guidelines are the same as the Colonial Village boards, because they review it before it comes to us, I see why it would be included.
With that, I'll make a motion. I move that HALRB approve the amended Colonial Village design guidelines as written.
Second.
Mrs. Swan, yes, if you support the motion. John Egan,
Yes.
Laurie Davis,
Yes.
Ray Henley,
Yes.
Becca Meyer,
Yes.
Mark Turnbull,
Yes.
Andy Winchell.
Yes.
Oh, what did I skip?
I'm voting yes.
Thank you. Motion carries.
You're the only one who remembered it.
Sorry.
Stuart.
Right, so thank you so much for coming. Appreciate that. So those are approved. I will include all the edits and send those as a finalized draft to you and Mr. King. And thank you.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Appreciate it.
Bye.
All right, bye-bye.
And how are you presenting?
We've got slides.
Oh, perfect. And you're in the meeting.
I will be in the Teams meeting.
So I can move this down there. Or do you want me to sit? Whichever way you all.
Yeah, we have two chairs.
Is that enough?
Yeah. Are you all ready for us?
Yeah.
Well, let's,
So feel free to, if once you're in the meeting, feel free to share your screen.
While Eileen's bringing that up, I'll just give everyone a brief overview of like where we are in the site plan process. So we filed, and this is the Wakefield Manor site, I think you all are familiar with. with its location. We've got some diagrams to pull up. But we filed our 4.1 site plan related applications in 2022. And the public review process kicked off in the winter with our first online engagement in December of 2022. We had our first SPRC meeting in March of this year and our second SPRC meeting in May of this year. Still working on some other comments and negotiations with staff. We anticipate, we might be going to the county board for approval this October. We're not, that date hasn't been nailed down yet, but that's where we're headed. And we, during the SPRC process, we understand Jerry Laporte was the liaison for HALRB. He attended both of those meetings and I think briefed you all on the project's design and its evolution. We understand we've been asked to present some design updates and architecture to you all tonight. So we've got,
Just kidding. I can't try to find
bear with us for a moment to get up to their website. But we've got some design updates from the May meeting that you've seen, as well as just general architectural overview of the
So just to kind of put it, I've been working with the project team to kind of help with providing some guidance, because staff, we all provide different guidance to site plans or major site plan amendments. And we've been trying to kind of assist with making suggestions on how the aesthetics of the proposed building, how it kind of works with the historic architecture. This is Wakefield Manor, Courthouse Manor, just that way. And probably one of our most loveliest garden apartment complexes in Arlington County. And I think there's only a handful of people who've been here when they saw the plan back in 2012.
2011, it was the last approval.
Yeah. Okay. And just to kind of, I'm sure you're going to go all through this, but
could you, while we're stalling, could you, for us, the new guy, could you explain, this is a condominium project that is being renovated, it's rental apartments, it's, I don't know, what are they doing?
Well, we're gonna go, we'll go into that.
Oh, okay, I thought everybody already knew
Oh, no,
that.
sure, no, we're gonna provide an overview.
We're gonna walk it back and give you an overview from the start, what's envisioned in the Fort Fire Heights North Plan, what was in the 2011 approval to now.
So yeah, this was a site, there's a chunk of property right next to Courthouse Manor and Wakefield Manor that right now has a single family house on it and a large tree. And that is
in the surface parking.
Thank you. So just like a small, it's a very tight area. And there was a building proposed.
Okay. I'm gonna mute you.
Hey, yes, please mute me. But there was a site plan that was approved back in 2011 for condominiums, but that never got done. Sometimes it happens where site plans just don't occur, and so this is seen as a major site plan amendment, but still has to go through all of the kind of public input process, and so there's an apartment building being proposed, and the design has changed. And Jerry has been a part of the review of that. And he presented this to us, I think, in May, some of his thoughts, and which is why we've been fortunate to have them come tonight, because technically they don't have to. They've done it. Thankfully, we put the request in and they were happy to come to kind of provide you a bit of an overview of how the design has changed and just how this project has gotten to where it is.
I thought you all could use a break from Barcroft.
They haven't. Yeah, that's true. So, all right. So go for it, Lauren.
And I apologize. I forgot to introduce myself just because I've seen you all pretty frequently over the past few months. I'm Lauren Riley with Walsh Colucci. We represent Fortis, the developer for this major site plan amendment on the Wakefield Manor site. I'll hand it now over to Eileen and Henry with KGD Architecture, the architects for the building, and walk you through their proposed design, previous approval, what you all probably saw in May, and then some updates beyond that.
So hi, I'm Eileen Horn, KGD Architecture.
Henry Mons.
appreciate the opportunity to come talk to you guys about the project. We've had a lot of shareholder feedback throughout this process, and I'm really interested to hear your all's feedback. Really want to touch on our process to get gotten to, and then talk about just real quick in terms of the site. So prominent site along Arlington Boulevard, right at the edge of the courthouse area. The main entrance for the building will actually be at Fairfax Drive in North Troy, but right at the intersection of Courthouse. And then, so the current proposal, as Lauren said, it's a major amendment. There's several site challenges that contributed to the building not getting built back in 2011. The building will still be 12 stories, similar to that previous approval. Now be 166 rental apartment units planned, 138,000 square feet of gross floor area. And then we're looking to make some improvements, both public and private, to the open space. So there will be some upgrades to some of the perimeter of the block in line with some of the 2011 approvals. We're reimagining the back courtyard area here. We're creating a garden space on the south side of existing Wakefield Manor building. And then we're working with the county on the potential for enhancing the green space that's off our property, public realm there at the end of the cul-de-sac. So to touch on that 2011 approval, it was very nice. I'll call it a boutique tower that designed to fit into the existing context. It was also 12 stories. Really the issues, the challenges with the new owner of the site and the potential to build a new building focused on massing. It was a very small footprint building. There were very large apartment units, and the market right now is for smaller size. You know, it really did reflect the architecture that's existing, but that translated with small windows, which again is not really what people are looking for when they're renting units in the Arlington area. It had some interesting details, one of those being like brick balconies. But again, you know, everybody's looking for large windows and views, and your balcony has to be 42 inches high, and so you're really blocking views with those some of the brick detail, the traditional look. And then just in terms of economics, this building had a 6-level garage, I think, and it was down into the rock, and just not feasible to build that. So this is providing a little less parking, but doing it in a more creative way with a podium, so to avoid the granite that's into the site. Well, real quick, you know, the Fort Myer Heights North Plan is driving a lot of the being a big design influencer on this. We're clearly, in terms of some of these key guidelines, the historic buildings are being preserved. We're definitely trying to relate to the overall neighborhood character. As I mentioned, we're working with some different private and public open space. And then these are diagrams from the Fort Myer North plan, and clearly talks to where the massing has gone in terms of a 12-story building. You know, along Fairfax Drive, there's a goal to really engage the streetscape. And so, you know, jumping from there, just wanted to touch on some of the neighboring buildings. It was, we definitely surveyed them to get a feel for in the neighborhood. There are, you know, the existing buildings are there 2 to 3 story garden style apartments. And so those other neighboring buildings, definitely we're not trying to reflect the architecture of the historic site, but definitely gave a scale that relates more to our building. Real quick, you know, some of the existing historic buildings designed by Miron Nasrobian, and, you know, very handsome buildings. I think the overall the composition of the different buildings really works well for this garden style apartment aesthetic. And we took a lot of cues from here in terms of the clean simplicity and quality brick architecture, basically. So here's the architect for the historic buildings. His primary architectural styles were Art Deco and Moderne. But I think, what he's really known for is being able to merge those different styles together. And so, we're hoping to kind of do the same or achieve the same with our building, where it references back to the past, but is trying to be a contemporary building that, again, is very marketable for our time. And I think he also, he was designing buildings for his time, and so he used a lot of temporary detailing for his time. He wasn't always looking to the past, looking to be, classic or traditional, but really creating architecture reflected in the time. So there's a couple items we're picking up on based on the architecture of the historic buildings. The focus on the base, middle, and top. Obviously, our building is a very different scale, but we're trying to create a strong base that relates to the scale of the existing buildings. Because of the terrain and the way the site slopes, we're actually doing like a two-tiered base because this building on Troy is sitting up the hill, and so kind of relates to the fourth story of our building. But when you get around the corner, that building is shorter down the grade, and so we have to kind of create that relationship. And then in terms of basic materials, very much trying to tie into the colors and the brickwork. So this is looking at the tops of the top of the building. This is Miss Robian's Wardman Park in DC. And what's interesting is he did high-rise buildings, and so we can kind of look to that as cues on how to treat the existing historic buildings being only 3 stories. He typically is using brick all the way up, but when you get into the taller building, you're trying to modulate the scale, and so he's using some mansard roofs, and we're actually introducing a hip roof to the top of our building to again break down the scale. Again, from his Woodman Park building, he used some curved balconies and other curved elements, and so on the left is entry corner of our building, so really trying to play off those curves, again reflect the Art Deco style, create a strong footwall. For 1940s buildings, he has some interesting details. This is one of the Wakefield Manor buildings where there's the corner glass windows, which again is,
More California style.
yeah, very different, very eclectic mix of things going on. But, again, this is an element that is interesting and really bodes well for apartment buildings right now. So we're treating the corners, several parts of the building with those glass. And then we're really focusing a lot of detail on the base of the building to create that strong streetscape. And here's one of the Wakefield Manor buildings, and a lot of it is very subtle brickwork, but very strong linear and kind of that modern approach. And then he gets into some detailing that's a little more contrasting, but our client really appreciated the kind of tone on tone, solid feel to the building. So our color brick again will coordinate with and match the existing. It's a flash brick, so there's some highlights in the brick and dark spots, and we'll have a strong water table, the horizontal bands, and then he's really known for his thin coins. And so we're repeating those on some of the accents of the. As I said, Ms. Robian did work on some taller buildings and some high rises, DuPont Circle in DC, and the Sedgwick Gardens building, which I think the original 2011 design took a lot of cues from. But even with a taller scale building, his focus on pattern and the use of brick. So, and then getting more into specific elements on our building, again, the Wardman Park has some strong towers that create some local asymmetry within bigger symmetrical buildings, which is something we've kind of played off of. And then the Hey Adams Hotel is an interesting one that Ms. Robian designed, and then in recent years, a local architect actually added to the top. So it's kind of a little bit of a interesting example of how you merge the past with the. So that's a little bit of just, things we looked at in our approach. As we mentioned, there's been some updates since the last submission, working with staff and the community and the owner. So we'll get into some imagery, but big focus is on trying to taper the buildings a little more to remove some of the boxiness at the top. We have setbacks. There's been a big focus on the north facade here and creating more separation between our building, existing building. We've created more of a central corner focal element and a tower. Before, the building was pretty flat at the top. I feel like that ties more to the architecture that's on site. And then again, working on evolving some of the back spaces. The courtyard we've lowered from where it previously was, and we're trying to create more of a garden element that's equitable there. So the image underneath is the previous design, and this is just a quick outline. Interestingly, working with staff, they were very interested in this building, relating to the historic architecture, but also being a gateway element at this prominent site location coming into courthouse. So we actually have looked at and making that tower element more prominent on the corner and actually pulling the height away from the historic building so that we can do a little more stepping down. So this is the updated elevation. This is the Troy Street elevation. We've kind of enhanced this corner element with some more glass so that it's a little more transparent, but kind of a little jewel sitting in the corner of the brick building. As I said, we've added a tower element up the top. It's an open kind of like gazebo element. There is public amenity or the residents amenity space at the top of the party room, so you can go outside to that covered area and take advantage of the views. When working with staff, the idea was to kind of, again, make this a feature element so that it kind of glows at night. So there is lighting up there, but also there's a trellis on the roof. So during the day, it's not going to be a dark space, but light is going to filter through there to kind of brighten it up. As I said, one of the big changes is introducing the hip roof screen to, again, give a little more of that traditional feel and relate to some of the roof elements on the existing buildings. And then here, so you can get a feel for it, is the updated design and then the original one we submitted. So again, the big focus on the cap piece and creating some more referential forms to it, and then really eroding this side. So we've gone to 2 brick bays and an all glass corner that's been, top is moved in about 5 feet, and this wall moves in about 5 feet, and then treating that gap differently. And then this is the Fairfax Drive side. Again, introduction of the roof element and the tower, and then a little bit glassier on this. And a big focus on the streetscape. Again, really trying to set pedestrian experience and the feel of the building and the detailing. So, as I mentioned, the water table. The curved glass on the lobby is really kind of trying to be a strong Art Deco reference. Working with staff, beefed up the canopy to make it more. And then, again, a lot of the detailing you see in the existing buildings with the cornice lines and pointing. This is the present view from Arlington Boulevard with the new corner tower and the roof elements.
We're here for any questions that you might have.
What were the green blocks inside the building? You showed from that.
You mean
Some
the
green
public-private space?
No, up on the roof of
Is
the
that a
penthouse.
So I tend to forget to mention, but this is a moment for us to provide any kind of last feedback to how the design is going or any questions that you may have. We're not making a motion, we're not voting on anything. And right now, the best way to approach this is provide our feedback. And as they're going through kind of the tail end of the public review process, they can figure out how they might be able to take in consideration, the HLRB's comments and suggestions. I tend to like to mention that, feel free to mention that to the planning commission and the county board that you came willingly to the HLRB and that you took those suggestions and made these changes. I think that always is appreciated, not just to the HLRB, but to the county board and the commission. So feel free to provide any input.
I will touch on real quick. So this is the corner tower element with the trellis. This is the penthouse, and we have some green roof areas up there. And then this is that new hipped roof that'll act as a screen for mechanical equipment. And then everything else is down below.
Well, and so the garden piece in the back is all a green roof. Down low.
And just as a refresher, the 2011 site plan, when that got approved, one of the site plan conditions was the fact that we would be getting a protective historic preservation easement on Courthouse Manor and Wakefield Manor, which that means forever.
And it's already there, so that occurred.
And that did occur.
That did occur, even though this building didn't get
built. So we kind of got our Christmas presents, birthday presents early.
Right.
Before anybody else got a present.
I just want to say, having sat through all the other meetings on the original design, and having gone back and forth quite a bit on that design, I think that I actually like what you come up with better. And I think the most recent changes you made improved it. I, in my heart of hearts, like to have seen something besides a tall building next to the historic site. But, reality steps in and things change. I also have a friend who lives in the Courthouse Manor building who is very concerned about this project and parking and light, how much is it going to block light coming through her window and that sort of thing. So that, it's concerns, obviously concerns. And you mentioned that parking, you had to change the parking because of the rock. Do you remember another project we reviewed that they did end up with a similar, not too far from this, Pierce Queen, they had a lot of rock issues and blasting and that sort of thing. So how far down are you going at this point?
Are to level 3? Well, 2.5.
Yeah, and
Down.
one of them is it has to come up out of the ground a little bit to get the clear height that you need. So that's why that courtyard element is elevated so that we can fit those parking levels into the hill before you have to get down into the rock. And it's surprisingly, the rock comes up pretty close to the top of the soil before the sites near Pierce and Queen. It's not that far down.
And we didn't focus any plans on it, but something the prior approval didn't have was providing one level of garage for the existing resident. So we'll provide 30 cars. Put that right.
The entrance.
Yeah, Troy closest to the.
Yeah, so they're able to come in here, but then they have a direct walkout access to this area so that they can get closer to the apartments. Yeah.
And I like the way you've picked up on the different Mesrobian reasons and put in.
Yeah, it's a fabulous building. I was wondering what the during your community consultations, what the residents of the existing apartments have said about the height and the blockage of the view and sun.
Right, we've had, our first SPRC meeting, they did not have anyone, they were not able to get anyone from the current apartments to come to that meeting. We did have them in the second meeting in May. And like you said, they are, their main concern is parking and construction, and then kind of site upgrades. Are they going to get like more trees, more shade? Because we know there's a lot of sun that hits that corner and can get pretty hot. And so we've addressed those through the revised proposed plan. We've planted, we're planting as many trees as we can fit on this small site to increase that tree canopy and try to address that issue. As far as construction impacts go, we have site plan conditions that mandate we have certain check-ins with the existing residents, and we meet certain standards as we go throughout the process to minimize impact to them. And then on parking, as Henry mentioned, we are replacing a lot of that existing parking on the surface with that first level of below grade garage. So we are preserving some parking for the residents there, and we are taking a reduced ratio on the new unit side because of our proximity to courthouse. So we understand parking is a big concern, but we're also within walking distance to Metro and to bus routes. I think there's a little bit more that needs to be investigated too as to how the existing parking is being used in terms of sounds like there are some cars that are just sitting there not being towed every day, not moving around quite frequently. So we're not quite sure what the current utilization rate is. So that's how we've addressed the community's concerns throughout the process.
You're taking down a pretty significant tree, and it's great to hear that you're planting a lot of others. Perhaps that space that's kind of at the corner of the historic building could be a site for a potentially notable tree.
We've identified, we're able to plant a larger deciduous tree here, kind of in front of that courtyard area to get at replacing that existing tree. Unfortunately, it's right in the middle of a development site that's in the Fort Myers Heights North plan, so we have to unfortunately remove that. But looking to plant where we can, and here we saw a good opportunity kind of in the middle of that gateway as people are crossing from Troy to courthouse to have an opportunity there for more shade, especially next to those the seating there. And then we'll also have trees on the green roof. You see it's planted there with understory and overstory trees as well.
Yeah, even if they were able to put even more trees, the problem that I've noticed with any projects in this area is that because the parcels are so small, you're trying to fit so much that a lot of times the utilities are all going, think of the Elkins building, we're having those discussions even, putting all the utilities around the sidewalk area, and there's usually something underneath that, and that's not enough space for the trees to grow very tall or even be that healthy. So, trying to hope that we can get another large canopy tree like what we have now in the middle of that site.
Not in the middle of the site so much as I'm just was looking at that corner. That's in
the corner that's like closer towards.
It's closer to Courthouse Road, and as you come off.
So that part, I think, is where there's vaults that need to be there.
Well, so there's two. There's two.
Is it the right corner I'm thinking of?
Yeah, this is the corner.
Yeah,
So there's
I think the vaults are over.
the vaults now are
here.
north of that, right
They're
there.
actually under here, so we're actually creating a garden to conceal those under some removable.
And then there is the corner that is made by the ramp.
That's what I'm talking about.
Right. Yeah. So this is what we're offering as an off-site improvement in that cul-de-sac area because there's a lot of opportunity there to kind of replant that space so that it's not just a dead space and you're not just looking at the road and the road there. So we are still working on this as a conceptual drawing. We're still working out with staff because it'll likely be county maintenance. It's county-owned land, so they do have to cooperate with us on this design. But we've taken this as an opportunity to enhance that kind of the front door of those Wakefield Manor.
Yeah, that's the
apartments.
site I was talking about.
So the garden concept, that's new since May.
Yes, that
And
is,
that-
that is new since May, and this hasn't been officially incorporated in our plan, again, because it's county-owned land.
Okay.
We're still working on this with DES as to what the planting is gonna look like, and what the county can reasonably maintain on a year-to-year basis.
Well, I'm sorry that Mr. Laporte's not here to ask, I'm sure, some of his very specific questions,
Right.
but I think that unless somebody has any other input.
Good question. Is the ground floor activated at all? I mean, is it like community space on the ground floor? Is it apartments or is it okay?
Yeah, if we can go to maybe the rendering too, the lobby is at the corner of Fairfax and Troy. It's a double height lobby to activate
So
that
you kind of
space.
go up that hill there. That what's on
It's
the
all
Yeah, so
lobby.
there's a
Okay.
lobby and then a mezzanine, so that will all be glass storefront, garage entrances here, but everything else is.
I really like your use of the Art Deco theme there to make it more active for pedestrians.
Yeah, there's been challenges with trying, I say challenges, please don't take that as an insult. It's more of, like, think of these buildings where they need to have areas for loading and trucks, and that's been, I think, I've heard many times, that's been trying to fit that all in.
Yeah, our small postage
Yes.
stamp site.
It's a bit
Is
challenging.
is space the reason that you chose to use the square balconies as opposed to the rounded the curved balconies that would have reflected more of the Wakefield Manor architecture and the front there? I mean, a row of curved balconies would have picked up that beautiful curved front.
Yeah, I think it's probably just a little more pragmatic.
A little more pragmatic.
Square, but I think.
It would look nice with that entrance.
Well, above the entrance is all curved.
Yeah, I'm just saying,
Oh, yeah,
if you
yeah.
replicated that in 2 bays of curved balconies, it would look cool.
Also have the asymmetry.
Those balconies above the entrance are curved,
Yes, they're all curved.
but the
I
ones
don't
on
know
the
why
side are
they're
flat,
not.
Right.
or square.
I apologize for
Questions,
the
suggestions?
difficulties.
Oh, yeah, sorry for the delay in getting started.
No, I mean, I don't think so. I'm sure maybe Jerry will, because you're gonna have one more, you think you're gonna have one more?
I think we're done with the
We're done with
SPRC.
this.
Yeah, we've had our online engagement to SPRC, so now we're just putting the final touches on the 4.1 site plan before we go to planning commission and county boards. That'll be our next step. I'm sure you'll probably get an update once we're officially scheduled for October or a later date.
And I'll connect with Jerry to see if he has any thoughts that he'd like to present to you, or how he thinks the HLRB, because I think he had made a suggestion of writing a letter. I'm always for that, but I'll coordinate with him on the timing with that. And also, just to kind of reiterate again, Wakefield Manor, Courthouse Manor, they have easements, and so if there are certain things that are being proposed around the property, I am a part of that review, at least because of the easement. But for the most part, everything's been already, there is language in there that says unless it's approved, the site plan, doesn't need to be reviewed again, but it all depends. So my eyes are always on that too.
Y'all, it's good to see you again.
Thanks for having me.
Pick up on the Wardman too.
Yeah, for sure.
Because they've got those nice, beautiful columns.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, anything else for the good of the order? Any other comments or questions about?
Two things for the staff report, if it's okay, just to bring up before we close out.
Oh, so
Yes. Surprise. No, so we mentioned about the county fair, and just wanted to kind of mention again that we are still on track to get the kind of latest finalized draft of the Historic Resources Master Plan that is still on track to be released to the public by the end of this month. There's still time left in August, so we are planning on still doing that. So we will update on how that's going. And then just yesterday, we were contacted by planning that the Plan Langston Boulevard study is moving through their commission lineup, and they would like to come to the HLRB in September to present about the longest study ever. So they would like to have a lot of time to talk to you all about it. Or if we were to kind of try and tailor what they might be able to present to you, we might be able to shorten that to 30 minutes. If not, we could go and ask them to show us everything. My suggestion would be for us to try and focus mainly on just the cultural resources that were identified during that study, how they're being treated, and then what does it mean with this plan? And basically, if there's any development projects happening along Langston Boulevard, what is the process for considering these properties and that? And that's my thought, but I wanted to get your all input.
The 30-minute option, the one you were just talking
Yes.
about? Okay, yes. I'm in favor of the 30-minute option.
I think focusing on the cultural resources, because my sense, I've been a little bit out of the loop for a lot of reasons. And I went to a meeting on Saturday and I had to leave early, so I don't know. It's mostly what I missed was various civic associations presenting their comments and asking questions and what they, reacting to the latest documents. But my sense was earlier on that perhaps they weren't really giving enough emphasis to the HRI buildings, for example, and other cultural resources along Langston.
We can definitely go into that because that on how we kind of addressed those properties. And I think that kind of what Plan Langston Boulevard, how they address the historic resources inventory properties might be similar to what we're going to start seeing in the future as we then start to evaluate the HRI and how we try and improve it, update it, expand it. So I think that this might be kind of a bit of a pilot to how we might be looking at that. And it seems like a lot of the members of the public have been concerned about, traffic calming, trying to keep legacy businesses, will rents go up? Will people be able to stay? Businesses be able to stay? As well as people who have seen maybe how their own individual properties are affected, possibly being suggested that they maybe houses end up going away in order to expand a corner to build a higher property.
Heights are a big concern, huge concern among people. For example, a proposal for 15 stories at Spout Run at Parkway and Langston, where the Lion Village Shopping Center is now. That's one proposal. I don't know if that's still in the latest iteration, but there are some pretty high heights. There's not, in my opinion, enough step back to the neighborhoods. Some places, at least, many places. So I think it has changed since the last time I took an in-depth look at it. I'm not sure it's changed as much as it could be.
Well, I have some ideas in my head of how we can look at it together to kind of maybe it's even, there's been a couple historic resources that have been challenging to try and figure out how to retain them and still allow for there to be some type of development around them. And so there are some creative approaches or suggestions we've been trying. And so maybe, and I don't anticipate that the study comes up with those answers. I always look at it as this is a study, this will be adopted, but it is seen as they are suggestions, they might be recommendations, and it always depends on whatever the project is, whatever the developer is seeing. It might change. As we've seen, sometimes we make recommendations to preserve entire buildings, and then sometimes we don't get that. But I'll see how we can kind of focus because it is a ginormous study. There's been a ton of public input. Maybe we can get a very quick, brief overview of what some of the concerns the public had and how the county addressed those with kind of redirecting, getting that input and taking it really into consideration, like heights, which they did make a lot of adjustments on, but then really just focus as much as we can on the cultural resources.
We can always tell them if they they can share with us the other aspects of it in a separate meeting.
We could.
You know, you can divide up your presentation.
We could. The thing about when it comes to planners is that they really like to stick to a particular schedule. And they say that they've met with the HLRB, check.
They do have to get to the planning commission and the county board by certain dates, and since we only meet once a month, we may miss their presentation to the county.
So that's the one, it would be, we can suggest that to them. I don't know if that will be,
Okay.
I don't know how much.
So you're saying the cultural thing is the most important part to see?
I think so.
Got it.
I think so.
No, I agree. I agree.
And I think we probably compete. Our plan there. Happening about the same time. Maybe the same meeting. Which will be interesting. So I just want to bring that up to you. I will work that out and that's it.
Who was asked to do? This plan was prepared by?
Well.
It's a long history.
Okay, I'll do it later. You can brief me later on
Sure, no
that.
problem. We can talk about that after the recording button.
Yeah, basically change is gonna happen and we want, the people who live along Arlington Boulevard wanted to make sure that it was planned instead of random.
Because it is random.
Because it is random and some of it has been random and not in a good way. Necessarily.
Okay, so I anticipate that that'll be coming in September.
And you had mentioned about the historic master plan. Will there be another special meeting you think this fall for that, or is that kind of ongoing?
So it's not a special meeting for you all, but I think the intention is to present on it again in your September meeting. So
Okay.
There's another reason why we can't extend the Plan Langston conversation too long, because we're also hoping to include.
You said we're competing with our own time during that
full
September meeting. We're going
meeting,
to talk
yeah.
about the plan.
We don't have many COAs yet.
And we should also note that the intention for our presentation is to not be nearly as long as it was the first time, which was a really big overview. I think Cynthia's goal, she's not here to speak to this, but her goal is to talk more about the changes we did make to it based off the public feedback we received.
And we will be going to the Long Range Planning Commission. Did I get that right? We'll be going to them in early September. That's a public meeting. If you all want to join in here on that, you can. And we'll also still be having to go to the Planning Commission. Yeah, so there will be opportunities to kind of hear how that's going. But we'll have more guidance in September to kind of let you know what we would really need from the HLRB to hopefully give thumbs up, green light, support.
Consideration looks really great.
Made some people nervous, which I kind of like.
Looks good.
Maybe I should set it after the button.
Well, with that, meeting is adjourned. Thanks everybody for your time.
Thanks everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.